Twilight sank over the hollow village like an exhalation too weary to fade, the air trembling with the hush of something half-remembered. Through the misted lanes, the faint scent of wax drifted, guiding gentle footsteps toward the ruins of an old chapel where the walls breathed in silence. There, among crumbled pews and shattered glass, a lone lantern rested upon an altar of dust. Its surface was veined with time, its glass clouded, yet within it pulsed the softest ember. A heartbeat of gold in a world of gray. The moment her hand brushed the metal, a whisper rose, delicate as sorrow and bright as longing, stirring motes of memory that spiraled like fireflies from forgotten dreams. The ember flared, and in its light the past awoke. Shadows of faces in the flame, eyes that loved, lips that pleaded, hearts that never learned to rest. The air trembled with 1,000 unfinished stories, waiting to be seen again. Morning found no peace in the village. The mist clung to rooftops like regret, and the air hummed with a strange pulse that followed her home. The echo of that flame. Every candle Ilara poured that dawn bled with gold light instead of pale wax, and in each reflection she glimpsed eyes that were not her own. Windows shuddered when she passed. Dogs whimpered at doorways. Somewhere deep in her chest, warmth coiled. Not comfort, but remembrance. She tried to ignore it, but every flicker seemed to murmur her name in voices too old to belong to the lip. The world had changed the moment she lit that lantern. She could feel it in the rhythm of her breath, in the slow throb of her heartbeat that no longer felt like hers. By nightfall, her candles refused to die. Even when the wind rose and rain battered the shutters, the flames burned with eerie stillness, their light breathing like something alive. She watched them, spellbound and afraid, as images shimmered across the glass. Fleeting visions of a woman waiting by a shore, of hands clasped beneath a dying sun, of a kiss interrupted by stormlight. The memories were not hers, yet they felt carved into her soul. She whispered to them, asking who they belonged to, but the only reply was the soft crackle of wax melting into shapes that looked almost human. Sleep would not come. The whisper in the flame had become a heartbeat beside her own. When she finally rose, the candlelight followed her like a shadow, licking the edges of her reflection in the mirror. For an instant, another face appeared beside hers, pale, sorrowful, watching her with tenderness that broke her breath. She reached out, fingers trembling against the glass, and the reflection mirrored her perfectly until the eyes blinked out of rhythm. That was when she knew it wasn't merely light that burned, but memory. Something sacred, sorrowful, alive. The following evening, drawn by an unseen pull, she returned to the chapel. The air inside shimmered with the scent of beeswax and rain-soaked stone. The lantern still glowed, untouched since she'd left, as though waiting for her. This time, when she approached, the flame bent toward her like recognition. The warmth spread through her chest, lifting tears she didn't know she'd been holding. Then came the whisper, clear, melodic, not from the past, but from within her. "You remember," it said. The candle's light trembled. And in that trembling, a single truth emerged. She was no longer alone in her memories. The whispers began the following dawn. Faint, melodic, almost tender. They threaded through the hum of her workshop, winding between shelves and jars, brushing her neck like a sigh. At first, Ilara thought it was the wind murmuring through the shutters, but the voices carried words. Names she did not know, promises uttered in languages that tasted of smoke and rain. Each candle on her bench flickered in response, as though listening, remembering. When she touched the nearest one, warmth flooded her palm, and a vision unfurled. Two lovers, standing in a field of ash, their faces hidden by light. The whisper rose again, closer now, and she realized it was not the wind at all. It was the candle of Aelora, calling the memories home. Mort, Tushers e. I to are, I. By evening, the voices had multiplied. They spoke of lost gardens, unfinished songs, and farewells never spoken. Each candle carried its own lament, and when their words overlapped, the air itself seemed to weep. Drawn by curiosity and dread, she recorded their murmurs on scraps of parchment, trying to make sense of what was being remembered. That was when she heard a new voice, deeper, steady, threaded with sorrow that felt human. It whispered not from the wax, but from beyond her door. She opened it to find a stranger standing in the mist, holding a lantern dimmed by long travel. His eyes, reflecting the glow of her workshop, looked as though they had seen this light before. He spoke of old myths, of a candle made from the tears of mourners, of a flame that remembered every heart it ever touched. She listened, her pulse quickening with every word, for his tale matched her own discovery too closely to dismiss. When he asked if she had seen it, she hesitated, feeling the flicker of truth in her chest. The workshop lights dimmed as though listening, and for a heartbeat, both stood in silence, the air thick with unspoken confession. Then softly he said, "It called me too." The room trembled as the candles swayed in unison, their flames bowing toward the stranger like witnesses to a secret reunion centuries in the making. As night deepened, Rowan revealed his purpose. He was an archivist of lost hearts, a collector of stories that history had forgotten. He had spent years following fragments of this legend, letters burned but never lost, songs written by those who could not let go. The candle of Eolara, he said, gathered all their grief, yet he had never expected to find it alive. Elara felt her breath falter, her mind torn between wonder and dread. She told him what she had seen, the faces, the whispers, the flame that knew her name. He listened, head bowed, and when he finally looked up, his eyes held the reflection of the same sorrow burning in hers. When the hour neared midnight, the flame in the lantern rose unbidden, its light unfurling across the walls like liquid gold. The whisper grew louder, no longer fragmented but coherent, sorrowful, beckoning. Both watched as shapes began to form within the flame, a woman reaching for someone unseen, a man dissolving into smoke. Rowan stepped closer, his voice low. "They remember us," he murmured. Elara felt her pulse freeze. For a fleeting instant she saw her own silhouette, entwined within the light, reflected beside his. The whisper hushed, as though satisfied. Then silence fell, deep, reverent, eternal, and the candle burned brighter than before. The third night brought neither sleep nor peace. The air within the workshop had thickened to a golden haze, each breath tasting faintly of melted wax and memory. Rowan pored through his journals, muttering about an ancient guardian said to keep the balance between remembrance and oblivion. Elara listened, her eyes fixed on the candle, whose flame pulsed with restless life. When the whisper came again, it no longer sounded like sorrow. It was a summons. A single gust extinguished every other candle in the room. Only one light remained, burning within the glass lantern. Then from within the glow, a figure began to take form, not born of smoke or dream, but of remembrance itself. The keeper had come to reclaim what the living had disturbed. The keeper's voice was neither echo nor speech, but vibration, a sound that resonated through their bones. He spoke of balance, of the living, stealing light that was meant to rest. Every memory burned, he intoned, must be paid for by the living heart that dares to remember. Elara felt her pulse tighten, the words sinking into her chest like molten wax. Rowan, trembling, stepped forward, pleading for understanding. Yet the keeper's gaze pierced through him with pity and sorrow, as if seeing a wound carved across lifetimes. The candle's flame bent toward Elara, recognizing its thief. The keeper extended his hand, and the room filled with a light so pure it tasted of tears. When Ilara awoke, she was alone. The keeper and Rowan had vanished, the candle still flickering faintly beside her. Yet something was missing, not from the room, but from within her. She could no longer remember the sound of her mother's voice, nor the song she hummed while pouring wax. The memory had dissolved like smoke, leaving only emptiness in its place. The keeper's warning rang in her ears. Every memory burned must be paid for. She realized with dawning horror that the candle was feeding, and she had become its offering. Outside, dawn crept pale and indifferent across the misted rooftops, unaware that one heart had begun to fade. At dusk, Rowan returned, his lantern extinguished, his voice trembling with revelation. He had followed the keeper through the corridors of light, visions of lost lovers, mothers and warriors who traded memories for one last glance at love. "He guards them all," Rowan whispered. "He guards what we cannot bear to lose." Ilara looked at him, her eyes rimmed with faint gold light, and confessed that something precious had already been taken. The candle flickered in response, as though amused by her grief. Rowan reached for her hand, but the moment his skin met hers, both saw fragments of shared memory, of laughter by a riverside, of warmth that felt like destiny rediscovered. That night, the keeper returned. Not through the flame, but through reflection. His figure shimmered within the mirror above the altar, his form wavering between sorrow and authority. He spoke softly, his tone almost kind. "You have bound yourselves to remembrance. Each heartbeat you share feeds the candle's hunger. Choose now, to forget and live, or to remember and fade." Ilara's tears fell silently, glowing faintly as they struck the wax below. Rowan met her gaze, understanding that love itself had become their offering. Together they turned toward the flame, its golden core widening like an open eye awaiting their choice. When the candle was lit again, it no longer glowed. It bloomed. The flame unfolded like a flower made of light, petals of memory stretching outward, illuminating scenes that had not belonged to this world in centuries. Ilara and Rowan stood transfixed as the walls melted away into vision. A field of silver grass beneath twin moons, lovers meeting beneath a weeping willow. Voices murmuring vows never fulfilled. Each flicker showed another story, another heartbreak reborn. But among the visions, one scene clung to her heart. A woman with hair like hers, and a man whose eyes mirrored Rowan's. They reached for each other through the veil of flame, their gestures echoing the pair who watched. The realization struck like lightning. These weren't strangers' memories. They were echoes of their own, carried through lifetimes of longing. "Orjus, Siu, the keeper's whisper lingered beneath the visions like a refrain. What is loved once may return, but never unchanged. Each memory that unfolded carried fragments of their own hearts, reshaping what they thought they knew. They saw the first glance of lovers at a marketplace, a farewell beside a crumbling bridge, a reunion in a storm. Every story pulsed with the same ache, love striving against the erosion of time. The candle's glow began to fuse with Ilara's pulse, binding her essence to its flame. Rowan's voice broke through the haze, calling her name, yet she could barely hear him. The visions had claimed her. She stood in two worlds, one breathing, one remembered, both demanding her to belong. Rowan took her hand and the visions shifted again. The field dissolved into the chapel where another pair, their reflections, stood centuries earlier. The woman's face was radiant with hope. The man's eyes wept with the sorrow of departure. "They were us," Rowan whispered, realizing that the candle had carried their love across lifetimes, forever reborn and forgotten. The air shimmered with the heat of revelation. The keeper's distant voice spoke once more. The candle remembers what the heart refuses to release. Alara's tears caught the light, scattering small rainbows across the walls. For the first time, she smiled through her grief, whispering, "Then let it remember everything." The candle's power surged as their hearts aligned. Memories cascaded through the room. First kisses, silent goodbyes, the sound of laughter under moonlight. Time folded inward, every echo collapsing into a single continuous heartbeat. Yet with every pulse of light, Alara felt herself unravel, each remembered joy claiming a piece of her. Rowan clung to her shoulders, trying to anchor her in the present, but she had already begun to fade, her outlines softening like smoke caught in sunlight. "If I must vanish," she whispered, "let it be with you in the remembering." And with those words, the light around them exploded into gold. When the brilliance subsided, the world was silent again. The candle burned low, its flame now calm and steady, casting a circle of gentle warmth. Alara knelt before it, her eyes heavy with both loss and peace. The visions had faded, yet their essence remained, not as ghosts, but as truth. Rowan touched her shoulder, and for the first time, she did not tremble. "They loved, and they lost," she murmured, "and still, they remembered." The keeper's distant voice replied softly, "And thus our hearts made it eternal." The candlelight pulsed once more, not with hunger, but with gratitude. The past had remembered itself, and the lovers, finally, were whole. The peace did not last. By the third night, the candle began to hum, a low, rhythmic vibration that filled the air like a heartbeat grown impatient. The walls of the chapel shimmered, sweating golden wax that dripped in slow, deliberate streams. The light no longer whispered memories. It demanded them. Alara felt it first. The faint tug behind her eyes, a warmth spreading down her spine. When she blinked, moments vanished. The smell of rain on her first morning, the melody of her father's laughter. Rowan's voice cut through the haze, pleading for her to stop staring into the flame, but she could not. The candle's pulse had synchronized with her own. Memory was no longer her possession. It was the candle's feast. By dawn, the village began to change. Windows bled light even after the candles within had burned out, and voices drifted through empty houses. Laughter, sobbing, fragments of lives no longer there. The candle's influence had spread, feeding on recollection wherever warmth was found. Rowan watched in horror as the mist over the fields shimmered with faces, and the birds carried echoes of forgotten names. Alara, pale and fevered, whispered that she could hear them all, every soul the flame had ever devoured, begging to be remembered. The keeper's absence was its own warning. The candle had outgrown its purpose. It was no longer a vessel of memory. It had become memory itself, unbound and insatiable. Desperation drove Rowan back to the keeper's reflection. He stood before the cracked mirror, shouting into the silence, demanding an answer. At last, the keeper appeared, faint, distorted, his form flickering like an image on water. "You have fed it with love," he said. "Now it hungers for all that ever was." Rowan pleaded for a way to stop it, but the keeper's reply was only sorrow. To extinguish the candle, the flame must consume what lit it. Rowan's gaze turned to Alara, whose body trembled. Beneath the growing light, the meaning was clear. The candle's first touch had chosen her, and only her life could end its hunger. He turned from the mirror with a heart full of ruin. Alara sensed his turmoil before he spoke. The candle flickered in rhythm with her breath, its light softer now, almost pleading. "It wants peace," she said quietly, "but it doesn't know how." Rowan knelt before her, voice breaking as he confessed what he had learned. The truth passed between them like a blade made of mercy. To end the flame, she must become its final memory. She did not flinch. Instead, she took his hand and smiled faintly. "Then let it remember love, not fear." Outside, the air shimmered gold as the village's light began to fade, drawn back toward the chapel like fireflies seeking their source. The candle had begun its final meal. The candle flared once more, blinding in its brilliance. The chapel vanished in a flood of gold. The air itself seemed to melt. Alara's voice was the last human sound. A whisper carried through light. "Remember us kindly." Her form dissolved into the flame, merging with every soul it had ever devoured. Rowan collapsed, reaching into the radiance, his cries swallowed by the roar of burning memory. Then suddenly, silence. The candle steadied, no longer hungry, but whole. Within its heart, two shadows stood hand in hand, motionless yet eternal. Outside, dawn crept over the horizon, and the village awoke to peace. But none who lived could remember why they wept. For a time, there was nothing. No chapel, no air, no heartbeat, only light. Rowan floated in that silence, his thoughts disassembled into fragments of gold. The candle's glow surrounded him, pulsing gently, alive yet peaceful. Then, from within that brilliance, he heard her voice, faint but steady, as though calling across eternity. "Rowan," she whispered, "we are not gone. We are remembered." Her words stirred the void, and suddenly visions flowed like rivers through glass. Every moment they had lived, every sorrow, every joy, replaying not as pain but as music. The candle's light was not consuming him. It was offering him release. He understood then that love was not meant to last in form, but in remembrance, and that remembrance was eternal flame. The candle's voice, no longer whispering but singing, filled the expanse. Its song spoke of every life it had held, every lover it had comforted, every sorrow it had soothed. The music vibrated through Rowan's bones, reshaping grief into wonder. He saw Elara beside him, radiant and whole, her laughter echoing like chimes through the golden air. Around them, countless souls gathered, luminous beings of light. The remembered, the forgotten, the lost. They bowed their heads, not in mourning but in gratitude. The candle had freed them, and in doing so, freed itself. Elara reached for Rowan's hand. "The light does not take," she said. "It keeps." And when their hands met, the world folded inward, becoming a single heartbeat of brilliance. As the brilliance waned, they found themselves standing once more within the chapel, though changed. The walls gleamed with faint veins of light, the floor a mirror reflecting constellations. The candle rested at the altar, its flame calm, no longer hungry but alive with quiet intelligence. Elara looked upon it and smiled. "It remembers us now," she murmured. Rowan nodded, realizing that though her body was gone, her presence lingered in the golden air. The keeper appeared one final time, his form softer, almost human. "You have given it what it lacked, a reason to rest." His voice trembled with reverence. Then, with a faint bow, he faded, leaving them bathed in the gentle glow of fulfillment. The keeper's departure left behind an impossible calm. Rowan stood at the altar, hand hovering above the candle. He could feel Elara in the warmth, not as a ghost, but as breath, as pulse, as remembrance. The light flickered softly, synchronized with his heartbeat. "You're still here," he whispered. Her voice answered inside him, clear and unafraid. "Always, because you remember." Outside, dawn spilled through the broken stained glass, painting colors upon his face: crimson, sapphire, gold. For the first time, he didn't weep. He smiled, knowing that love had outlasted loss, and that in every flicker of light, her memory would live anew. When morning came, the world had changed. The village awoke in warmth, though no fires burned, their hearts lighter, though they did not know why. The candle of Elara still burned in the chapel, a quiet guardian of memory, its flame small but eternal. Rowan remained its keeper, writing every day by its light, not to preserve the past, but to honor it. He wrote of a woman whose light never dimmed, whose love taught even the flame to rest. Sometimes, when the wind passed through the chapel, it carried a soft hum, like laughter remembered. And beneath that hum, if one listened closely, a voice whispered through the glow, "We are never lost. We are only remembered." Years passed, though time felt weightless within the golden calm of the chapel. Rowan's hair silvered beneath the soft light, his eyes gentle with the patience of one who has seen beyond endings. Each dawn he lit the candle anew, whispering stories into its glow. Stories of the village, of kindnesses remembered, of love reborn through simple gestures. The flame never changed, yet it seemed to listen, flickering brighter at his words. One morning, as the horizon bloomed in pale gold, he felt warmth on his shoulder. Familiar, tender. Turning, he saw her, not as shadow or spirit, but as light itself, standing where sunrise met memory. "It's time," she said softly. And for the first time, he felt no fear in leaving the world behind. He rose without a word, taking her hand. The same gesture, repeated through countless lives. The candle pulsed, recognizing its two keepers, and its flame expanded until it filled the air with soft gold. The village bells rang faintly in the distance, though no one had touched them. The keeper's voice returned one final time, echoing like the low hum of eternity. All things remembered must someday rest. The world around them began to dissolve into light. Walls, pews, sky, until only warmth remained. Rowan looked into Alara's eyes and saw not reflection but infinite continuity. Every lifetime they had ever shared, spiraling into forever. Together, they stepped into the brightness. Outside, the villagers gathered, drawn by the sudden brightness that poured from the chapel's open doors. They shielded their eyes, yet the light carried no pain. Only warmth, familiar and kind. When it faded, the chapel stood empty. The candle rested on the altar, its flames smaller now, steady and calm, reflecting two silhouettes within its heart. The villagers felt tears without knowing why. In their dreams that night, they saw a man and woman walking through endless fields of silver grass, their hands intertwined, their laughter echoing through starlit air. They did not know their names, but their hearts did, for love leaves traces even when memory does not. The candle burned through centuries, its flame neither dimming nor consuming. Generations came and went, each finding solace in its glow. Lovers wed before it, widows prayed beside it, and wanderers left offerings of letters and flowers. The legend endured, that every soul who had ever loved and lost was remembered in its light. Yet none knew the truth, that within that steady flame, two spirits kept eternal vigil, guarding the warmth they had once surrendered. And sometimes, when the wind swept gently through the chapel, the flame leaned sideways, as if bowing to unseen footsteps passing by. At last, there came a dawn unlike any other. Quiet, vast, infinite. The candle flickered once as though sighing, and its flame rose in a spiral toward the heavens. The villagers who witnessed it said they heard laughter, like wind chimes carried across eternity. When the light faded, the lantern remained empty, its glass cool to the touch. Yet in every home, every window, every candle newly lit that morning, the same golden hue appeared, a gentle shimmer of remembrance. The candle of Alora was gone, but its light had chosen the world. And in the softest corners of the heart, where love and loss meet, its glow would never fade.